I think it's very tough for individuals to either select individual stocks, select individual times to enter the market, select currencies. I mean, I think that's a game that they tend to get interested in at the wrong time. There's some adverse selection in terms of when people who do not follow stocks carefully get interested in stocks. And I think that the best investment you can have for most people is in your own abilities. I mean, when I talk to students, I would pay a student. In many cases, I would be glad to pay them $100,000 for cash up front for 10% of all their future earnings. So if I'm willing to pay $100,000 for 10% of them, I'm valuing the whole person at $1 million, just capital value standing there in front of me. And anything you do to develop your own abilities is probably going to be, or your own business is probably going to be more productive for you than starting to think about individually making commitments into foreign exchange. If you have a good business in this country earning money in dollars, you'll do okay. I mean, you may live in a world 20 years from now where a couple percent of the GDP is going to service the debts and the ownership that we've created now by running these deficits. But you'll do fine in America, so I wouldn't worry about that much. Charlie?
Well, if you look at Berkshire, you will find that it really doesn't do much of conventional asset allocation to categories. We are looking for opportunities, and we don't much care what category they're in. And we certainly don't want to have our search for opportunities governed by some predetermined artificial bunch of categories. In this sense, we're totally out of step with modern investment management, but we think they're wrong.
Yeah. And incidentally, we have 80% of our money or more, well over 80%, tied to this country and to the dollar. So it's not like we've left the country or anything of the sort.
But when have you done a big asset allocation strategy?
Never.
Yeah.
Yeah. We end up with peculiar asset mixes. I mean, if the junk bond thing had gone on a little longer, instead of having $7 billion in there, we might have had $30 billion in. But we were doing that simply based on the fact that it was screaming at us. And we do the same thing with equities. I mean, back for many years, we had more than the net worth of Berkshire in equity positions, but they were cheap.
And I want you to remember one of my favorite sayings as you do this asset allocation. If a thing's not worth it doing at all, it's not worth doing well.
Yeah. You can see why Ben Franklin turned the mantle over to Charlie.